Today, I'm so excited and so glad to have Monique in the house with me. Yes, thank you for to come here for my talk show. And before we start, let me introduce Monique to you first. All right. Monique, she is a speaker, facilitator, and coach. She helps people to reduce their conflict and increase their collaboration. Monique draws from her 30 years of crisis intervention work so that you can start feeling more heard, respected, and also happier. She is now worked as an emotional CPR educator, a level 2 accredited trainer for the DISC as a human behavior consultant, and is a certified NLP professional coach. Monique's strategy empower people to better understand their own priorities and also finally ask for what they want, but without being a jerk. That's my favorite line, Monique. Thank you again. So now, let us jump into it. Before we dive further into how, let's explore what is imposter syndrome first. Can you please share with us maybe with some example or scenario and better let us understand more?
Sure. So imposter syndrome, and it's become a real keyword, like even Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook and Michelle Obama, they're talking about their imposter syndrome. It's become a real thing right now, right? And a lot of people sometimes think that it's an anxiety disorder, but it's not. It's not in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for Mental Illness. So it's not considered a mental illness. But if you go speak to any psychologists that are helping people with imposter syndrome, every single one of their patients suffer from anxiety. So there is definitely some kind of a connection. So I think it's a question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so what it feels like is a feeling of inadequacy. I'm not competent. Even if someone is like objectively successful, like Michelle Obama, come on, successful, what? Of course. But they feel like a fraud inside. They feel like someone's going to figure them out. And when they feel good, it's just very, very temporary. It's very fleeting, and they'll compare themselves and they'll assume that everyone else is doing it better and doing it easier than they can. So people will think, oh, that's because personalities, people who are driven don't get it. That's not true. People who are driven do get it. You can be an outgoing person. You can be a reserved person. It doesn't matter. I think the only people who would never get imposter syndrome, and this is my opinion, this is not like based on research that I know of, is people who don't feel any shame. They never feel guilty or embarrassed. They always feel like, yeah, I'm amazing. Those people don't get imposter syndrome, but they have a different problem, and we don't want them around either. So,
this is like, agree.
Yeah, because they don't personalize. If somebody says something to them, they don't personalize it. They don't take it personally at all. They go, yeah, that's your problem, right? And so having this feeling of I'm invincible is the opposite of imposter syndrome. So really, we all have experienced imposter syndrome, right? Not imposter syndrome, but self-doubt, but we're talking imposter syndrome is chronic self-doubt. They never stop it. Like, remember when you were a teenager and you were trying to figure out, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? And you were like joining clubs and you were meeting people and stuff. And there were lots of moments where we feel doubtful of ourselves.
Yeah.
But someone who develops imposter syndrome, they never outgrow that.
Yes.
They never outgrow that. It just continues.
I would see that sometimes it's like a conflict between our own perception, own self-perception, and what others perceived about us. It's like having that conflict is not really, really so helpful.
Well, the thing is our perception, it's almost like we're giving away our power. And we look at another, like chronic people pleasers have this problem. They don't want it, they seek approval. Yeah. And so and teenagers will feel that with their peer group, right? I want everyone, I'm not a popular kid. You'll hear that kind of thing. Then it turns out that, they'll say, you're right, I'm not a popular kid. I'm a nerd and I like being a nerd. And they own it and it becomes them. They're not looking outside to feel good about themselves. They feel it inside.
Yeah, that's why it makes me so heartbroken when I see people like minimize their true power. You know, people sometimes they have all this true power inside them, and they yet to they can't acknowledge what people tell them about their accomplishments, everything about that, and they feel like they are inside, like what you mentioned just now, they feel like a fraud.
Yeah,
So
they feel like I'm not good enough to do this.
yeah,
And and even when they accomplish it, and this is key. Someone who has imposter syndrome, when they are successful,
mhm,
it's really interesting because they don't enjoy it. In fact, when somebody points out to them, wow, you did such a good job, in their head, do you know this guy's name is Daniel Amen? He wrote The Brain That Heals Itself.
yes,
Okay.
Dr. Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you remember him? Okay. So he has this one thing, he talks about automatic negative thoughts,
Hmm.
or what he calls ants.
And yeah.
Automatic, the ants in your head are the automatic negative thoughts. And so people with imposter syndrome have that. So let's say we do something and we're really successful at it, and people start applauding. Someone with imposter syndrome will say, well, no, I didn't really do it. It's because he helped me find that lead, or he connected me with someone, or she did this and I couldn't have done it on my own. And it's not just about being humble. It's about not taking credit for anything that we did. So
Yeah.
someone who will actually feel distressed. And if they were really successful, they only remember all the things they planned to do but didn't get done.
Yeah.
And they feel like, oh, if they only knew, if they only knew. And there's a lot of rumination. So that's why I said all people with imposter syndrome if they go for help, like for therapy, they will get diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder, a generalized anxiety disorder or something.
Yes, totally. And definitely to their confidence level. Can you share with us like a little bit more about how the imposter syndrome can affect our confidence level towards our future goals? Like can be so detrimental to what we want to achieve in the future.
But that's the problem. A person who has imposter syndrome doesn't know what they want.
Mm.
They're always looking outside of themselves, and they're letting someone else dictate if they're successful. So we'll see a lot of people with imposter syndrome. Like I grew up in a really critical home. Okay. There wasn't a lot of support. There was conflict. There was drama in my family. And because of that, I was always like walking on eggshells. Right. So and the thing is one day what would be considered, oh, you did that well, maybe that didn't happen often. The next day, if I did the same thing, is that why did you do that? So you never know where it's going to go. So when you live in a really this kind of uncertainty with like different kind of dynamics within a family home, you grow up always doubting yourself and wondering, okay, well, if you're always trying to guess what the other person wants, when you're doing that all the time, you don't know what you want. You're always just trying to stay out of trouble. You're always trying to give someone, make someone else happy. And that's where people pleasing comes in. I mean, I meet people with imposter syndrome. They are either super driven to make a lot of money to impress people they don't really like, or they're just like they just feel like they have to give everything away so people will like them. So it kind of falls in those two.
From your point, I can take a link to another side, which is this side is imposter syndrome exists in the first place. Sometimes it's good for us to really dig down inside why we have this imposter syndrome. Like just now you bring up the topic about our background, what happened when we are young, as a kid that time when we are young. So can you
don't
share?
always remember, and that's the thing, right? Like people say, oh, I had a good childhood, and when you ask them, well, what happened, they don't have any bad memories, and all they've done is they've contained them. They've learned to survive. It's a coping skill. They've learned to survive. So it affects our nervous system. And then and that increases the automatic negative thoughts that Dr. Amen talks about. And then before you know it, it takes over our whole brain and everything. Yeah.
I'm a big fans of Dr. Amen.
I love his stuff.
Mark
Yeah.
is so fantastic talking about brain. And as a nutrition coach, I am obsessed about the brain health because
Absolutely.
with our brain, we can't work at all, anything in our life. So that's why it is such a great topic when we talk about, and definitely there's so much of linkage between our imposter syndrome with our brain together with our anxiety, whatever we feel and experience. And now let us explore the how, because I know that you have a model which is a very comprehensive model that maybe you will take a day workshop to share with other people. But right now, in a very short conversation, can you synthesize it to the key point that people can use it and can take action directly to help them? Share with us.
Well, before we go into my model, let's talk a little bit just about imposter syndrome, like some strategies where someone can start feeling better about themselves. Okay. Because the model is one of the things, but I think it's part of a bigger picture. And that might be done with a therapist or with a coach or whatever, but it is important. So the first thing, we talked about it already, it's the automatic negative thoughts, the ants. So we have to stop and question what we're saying to ourselves. And that can be really hard to do in the moment. But when we start to think about, oh, I should have done this. Oh, I was so stupid. If we can stop and ask ourselves, okay, first of all, what is my real emotion here? Do I feel, is this guilt? Is this fear? Get in touch with the emotion underneath that. Is that disappointment in myself? Where does that come? And working through that, if we can start digging into our emotions, we can start controlling them better. So we have to see what belongs to me and what belongs to someone else, right?
Yes.
So that'd be the first one, is really questioning my automatic negative thoughts. And the second one would be to talk with someone else, because sometimes we do need another person to, tap into those positive feelings. Sometimes we can't find them on our own. Sometimes we need somebody else to help us find them. And that can be a therapist. It can be journaling, just changing the self-talk, but it helps with another person. I really, really promote therapy and coaching. I think that when we have a professional relationship with someone, we can really put on our Sherlock Holmes hat and start looking at things a little bit more closely. I'm not taking it personally. Okay. So that would be the second one. The third thing would be, and this is where I really had to do a lot of work. Figure out what my personal values are. And if we're feeling like an imposter, I might not be living my true purpose. I'm trying to live someone else's purpose. So sitting and thinking about, well, what makes me happy? Again, emotion work. All of this stuff is emotion work. It's all about becoming aware of our values, becoming aware of our feelings, and really acknowledging and embracing them. Two books that I could recommend for digging into that would be Simon Sinek's Start With Why, right? And the second one that I did a long time ago and I really liked was the Passion Test. And it's sort of, because when we're finding ourselves feeling uncomfortable around someone, it might be because they're not aligned with our values.
Yes.
So for instance, if we really value family and we're hanging around with people who only value, material things, there's going to be, we're going to be at odds with each other, and it will make us feel like we're not measuring up to them. But there's also a reason why we don't measure up to them, because that's not our value. So when we start to live our values, and my own life started just transforming when I figured out who I wanted to be for me and not for someone else. And it meant I had to start saying no to people No is the biggest word in the English language when you're an imposter, when you feel like an imposter. You just feel like you have to say yes to everyone. Or if you have to start asking people how to change their behavior. And so it really comes down, and we have to shift it. And can I tell you a story? This is something I did a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so I realized that I was such a people pleaser and I couldn't say no and everything. And this is years ago. And I was going to a support group. It was after leaving my narcissistic alcoholic husband. And I was at a support group for families who have someone who's an alcoholic. And I was listening to all these emotions and everything. And people, and someone said that to me, you just worry about other people more than you worry about yourself. And he challenged me and said, how about you just decide that nobody else matters for a while? Just test it out. Just try it. So in the morning, every morning, I would get up and I would look in the mirror and I would say, I don't give a fuck about anybody else. And that sounds really harsh, but I was such a people pleaser. All I did was tone it down a bit. It's not like I went out and I was mean to people, but I was like, I pretended I was a tough bitch first thing in the morning. And I would go out and I would be able to say no a little easier. And just saying no felt like I was like declaring World War III when I started this. But then once I started doing it, it's like a muscle. So first you start by saying no to things you don't want, which is why it's important to know what you do want. So you can say no to things you don't want and say, no, that's not okay with me. And when we start taking control of what we want, we start feeling empowered. And people who live in the imposter syndrome, they don't feel empowered. They don't feel like they have the power. They've given away their power to someone else to define if they're okay or if they're not. And that's where the anxiety kicks in, right? So, yeah.
Always the Nana topic to talk about how to say no, to set that boundaries. I am also learning in the journey because me too. I am always, care for other people, and it's always easy to say yes, and it's hard to say. And I am like, okay, now I need to pick it up, say no more often. And how? It's like step by step. I'm in a learning process as well right now. I'm not a perfect one. It's still learning. So it is like, okay, so there's so much of linkage comes to the imposter syndrome. To recognize, to stop that ends, the automatic negative thoughts that we have, right? So important. A lot of people, sometimes I want to get to the very actionable step right here. Some people tell me, Joyce, I can't stop. It just automatically comes by like this, and I cannot stop. What is your take on that? How to stop it?
How to stop the automatic negative thought? Yeah. So the best question to ask ourselves, if we can, and it's better to do it when we're calm, right? Like to make a point of calming ourselves and then maybe journaling it out and asking ourselves, how is this helping me? Is this helping me or is this hindering me? This thought, like write out the thought, like whatever that thought is, like I didn't do it well, or I didn't do enough, or so-and-so is prettier than me. I don't know, whatever it is, like that's making us feel bad about ourselves. And stop and calm ourselves down first. Got to start from a calm place to do this. And then start like questioning it, just really questioning it and saying, that's where we need to start. And when we do that often enough, by challenging it, it becomes easier to recognize. So when we're getting it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I had this conversation with myself last month, and I decided that was a stupid thought. And then we can flip it. Then we can reframe it and say, I was because again, it's always emotion work. It's everything about imposter syndrome is about emotion work. It's about keeping depression or anxiety at bay, because we are always trying to achieve and we're trying to push through. And I mean, we see people who develop OCD and other anxiety disorders just for trying to get to a place that they've set for themselves. And at the end, I mean, how often has it happened that we got what we were aiming for, only to sit there and not even enjoy it or not even appreciate it, because now it's like, okay, now I got to do another one. And so it's about taking the time to breathe and celebrate the small wins, celebrate the small thing we did. Like, when people wait till they're burned out to learn this. I would do this before burning out, folks. If you're listening, don't wait till you burn out. Do it now, right? And it means saying no. It does. It does mean saying no. And I remember there was this nurse. This is years ago. And she was talking about, she's devastated. So she had her annual review with the boss. And, when they do an annual review, they list all your accomplishments and how you're doing great and all this. And she was flying high and, oh, you did this and we just love you. And oh my God, you're just so good with the patients. And oh, if it wasn't for you, this place would fall apart and all that. But in the questionnaire, it also says, something you should work on. So the boss said, I really couldn't think of very much, but I thought, oh, maybe you could just do something with this. It was a little nothing, not even in any way was going to impact her job. But she says, I kind of have to give you something. That's what they want me to do. So here, do this. She just cried and cried and cried. So that level of perfectionism is a symptom of imposter syndrome, when it has to be perfect. And we can't see how good it is unless it's perfect. And so we really have to question, how useful is this?
That's why you link it so much to, like what you say, imposter syndrome linked to the emotional work so much. And how would I say, is like those people that experience imposter syndrome, including me last time, I will hold myself in the higher standards. It's like I work real hard for those things. Like what you say is like, after you achieve another, you want to achieve another. It's like for those high people out there,
an imposter will only do that. But someone who's more balanced will stop and say, I need to celebrate this.
Yeah.
And that's something that they don't know how to do, is to celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
And if people can just make a point of, like, the whole gratitude movement that started, like having 3 gratitudes at night or in the morning or whatever, to just say, this is what I'm grateful for in my life, that absolutely starts flipping that on its back. Just by it does everything. It calms our nervous system, calms the brain. We become better focused, calms the gut. I know you're into nutrition, so it calms the gut, and everything is related. And so, so we have to do that. So getting back to saying no. So years ago, when I realized what a mess I was, I took an assertiveness training course. And this is about 35 years ago. And so I had to go and get the information. It's just like nowadays we study emotional intelligence, and we study all kinds of things. It's always about emotions, right? But in assertiveness, we learn how to ask someone to change their behavior. And for someone who feels like an imposter or who is a people pleaser, asking someone to not do something or to do something else can be very, very difficult. But it is the key to reclaiming our sense of self. That's why we have to figure out, what do I want? What's important to me? And say no to the things that don't fit. It's like, we all have closets with clothes we never wear, right? So right, if we want to put something else in that closet, we got to get rid of the stuff that doesn't fit. So by knowing my values, knowing what's important to me, knowing, and then saying, well, this is not going to work for me, they might want to push us because they used to be able to. So when we start saying no, people start pushing back. So we have to have a tool or a frame that's going to help people ask for that behavior change. So that's when I developed RISES, or RISE. The RISE model is what I call it.
Tell us more about that.
Okay, so that's when we start. Let's say somebody, because this is the hardest thing, until we can start having those difficult conversations with people, we're always going to feel like an imposter. We're always going to feel like that because someone's kind of taking advantage of us and we're not making any demands in return, right? So when somebody is doing something that we want them to stop, and I'm talking about something that happened a few times, so we know that there's an actual behavior shift we want. For instance, if someone makes jokes at your expense, for example, okay, so they say something to hurt your feelings. Okay, we would review that behavior and we would say, when you make jokes at my expense. So that's reviewing the behavior when you, and it's a behavior, not when you act like a jerk. That's not a behavior. I'm actually labeling you, right? That's not helpful. So when we review the behavior, we're talking about the thing they are doing or saying. And then we identify the impact. And that can be like in the workplace, it would be like, when you do this, when you speak about me in a personal way like that, that's to demean me. I don't really feel like doing your work, boss. I don't really feel motivated and I make more mistakes. This is costing you money.
Yeah.
This is an impact on you, right? That you're doing this to me and it's impacting you. And then you have to specify the desirable behaviors. You have to say what you want instead. So if it's, I don't want you making personal attacks. I want you to tell me what to do. Tell me what you need done. And I want you to do it with respect without making any personal comments. If you have a snide comment, swallow it. Just swallow it. Then, so that's the R, review the behaviors. The I is identify the impact. S is specify the desired behavior. Then the E is to explore the consequences. Okay. Now there's two kinds of consequences. One is a positive consequence. So, hey, boss, if you speak to me with respect and you make no snide comments and you just swallow those thinking you're funny, but you're hurting my feelings. Okay. If you do that, I'll get the work done in twice the time, in half the time without any mistakes. And it will be to your advantage. That's a positive consequence, right? Now, if it continues, then you add the negative consequence. You can do both if you want, but you have to be sure that whatever consequence we're giving, we're certain we're going to follow through. So if we give a negative consequence, like I'm going to report you to HR, would be a negative consequence. If this continues, I will report you to HR. And so then we're taking back our power, right? We're empowering ourselves.
That's, I think the taking back the control is one of the very main part in the communication, I would say. Right now, just I give a very good example that highlight what is the scenario that we can actually talk to our superior, right? Our boss, whoever we are communicate with. So let's switch gear a little bit. And I definitely use your RISE model to see, like, we talk a lot on how that the imposter syndrome, that we can help the individual to help them to overcome that imposter syndrome. What about create an environment in the workplace that foster different leadership style? Because I know that, Monique, you are the trainer for a lot of different leaders in the companies, right? So yes. How that actually we as a leader in a company that can help to create that kind of environment for our team members. So
if we're a leader, and I love that you're asking this question, because when people say to me, the people pleasers that come to me will say, I can't really say no. And I say, okay, are you okay with your daughter never saying no? You have to model the friggin' behavior. So if we want to create an environment that feels safe to people who may have a harder time owning their space and all that, we have to model it for them as leaders. That's why it's important for us to do it.
That's why this talk show is not just for the individual, but I really hope that those leaders out there that listen to this, please remember that we can create an environment, that we can help our team member to perform better so that you can create a business that you love and make a difference in the world. So
Yeah.
I really love
And,
all.
and it feels safe, right? It
Yes.
feels safe for everybody because more things get done.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just, that's absolutely the key. And when I teach the DISC model, what I love about it, it's a person, it's like understanding people's the different personalities that can be in the office or at home or whatever. And you know the old saying where it's speak to people the way you want to be spoken to. I say speak to people the way they want to be spoken to. So if we're speaking to somebody that is like a real tough guy, all this macho, whatever, we're not going to go in, hello, ask you a favor. Like that's just inviting. You're just setting yourself up as a target. So we approach them in a way that in their language. Okay, come on, we need to talk about this. This is really important. I hope you're listening to me. If they're an outgoing person, you're going to talk faster. If they're a more reserved person, you're going to talk slower. So you're going to talk to them in the way their personality matches. And that makes a big difference in leadership. If people can understand where the other person is coming from, then we can really increase collaboration because people are speaking to each other in the way they need to hear to feel motivated and really dig into the work.
Let's come back to your tagline, reduce conflict and increase collaboration.
Yes, that is the goal.
Yeah, I read from your copy, I read from your website. You have all this tagline all over the places. And definitely this is such a great session that we have together here. And thank you so much for your great insight. If all the audience would love to check on you, where they actually can go to, Monique?
Well, actually, I've sent you a document on my RISE model. So if they go on that, they'll have my website, they'll have my email address. It's all right on there. It's a freebie. You don't even have to sign up for it. Just download it, share with all your friends. I just think everybody needs to learn to assert themselves and have better relationships.
Yes. So this one, I will definitely put the link below wherever you are listening to my talk show, this one, so you can download. Be sure, because I read that PDF already. It's a very good one. It's a very good model. Please download it and check it out, and definitely want to put into your action. Okay, now Monique, thank you so much once again. And do you have any words of inspiration before we end our conversation to our audience?
Oh my gosh, just go out and be your brilliant self. I mean, everybody who's listening out there, we are always saying, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Or I should have done this. We're shoulding on ourselves. I'm telling you, don't should on yourself. Be brave. Know you're brilliant because you are.
You're more capable than you think you are, right?
100%. Yeah.
And I love you so much.
Yeah, me too, Joyce. I'm so happy we finally did this. It took a while.
Yes. We are talking about it some time already. We didn't have a technical issue here and there, but we made it. Thank you once again. And now Monique and I would love to hear from you. What is the biggest insight that you learned from our session today? And then you want to take action right now. Let us know in the comment section below. And we're going to see you soon in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you.